Hello, welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. I'm Andy Cleff. Pleased to have back Gene Gendel. Nice to see you, sir. How's today's been?
Uh, Thank you for having me, Andy. It's a pleasure. It's my pleasure to be your guest. I'm honored. I remember every time you host me, or it's just you're very welcoming. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. Gene, for those who don't know of him, lean and system thinker, challenger of organizational structure and culture, helper of teams on their path to improvement. Last time we met, Gene, you shared one of your superpowers, if I recall correctly. It was the ability to, how shall we say, politically correct, smile into problems.
Yeah. Is that what I said last time? Yes, I do tend to always smile, and that's how I end up with so many wrinkles.
Let's talk about the flip side. You remember Superman, he had his kryptonite. What in the workplace is extremely harmful to you, causes you some weakness, or takes away that superpower?
What's my weakness, right? Well, what makes me weak?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to give a cliche answer. Oh, my weakness is my aspiration to work hard. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone and the mother says that in the interview right now. My weakness is I do have some, I guess, what comes to mind. Sometimes when I feel overly passionate about something, I tend to get a bit short on breath, like for a few seconds. And just because I got this something inside of me that starts boiling, hey, yeah, I got to rebuttal this. This is BS. So this is something that is my weakness, because if I do have to reply ASAP, my voice gets weak. So it's something that I need to learn how to control. Like,
Mm.
even though I want to rebuttal with a strong argument, it does not mean I need to lose my coolness. Cool heads prevail. I should like inhale, hold it,
Inhale,
and then speak. So it's a
exhale.
physiological thing, I think.
Yeah, there's something there. Well, if I find you holding your breath, I'll figure out the
Yeah.
subtle reminder. A quick recap, it seems like Gene's kryptonite is bullshit, so please leave it at the door. In case you missed it, listeners, episode one was 2 weeks back, something like that. Oh, time's a blur. It was about organizational enablers, and we focused on the how and why of HR policies and financial structures and how they're critical areas to enable, or if misapplied, constrict the ability to make meaningful transformation. I'll make sure there's a link to that first episode in the show notes. So today, in this episode, which we can officially call the second in a series, we want to build on that conversation. And we're going to dive into what true product orientation means, why it's more than just relabeling boxes on an org chart or job titles from last week you were a BA, now you're a product owner, or recently, hey, project managers, you're now delivery managers. Oh, wait, maybe you're back to project managers again with that merger. Too soon?
Yeah, well, let's not get started on that merger, please.
Okay.
You'll get us.
Yeah, we'll both stop breathing. And then at a later date, we hope to close out this trilogy of Beyond Agile Theater with a really great conversation about org design and how it's critical for setting things up for sustainable agility.
Yeah.
But today, let's unpack some common misconceptions about product-centric organizations. We'll examine how work breakdown, team structures impact that product focus, and then explore the connection between product orientation and effective budgeting. I have a theory that effective budgeting might be the fourth show in the trilogy. Does that sound like a good setup, Gene? Any adjustments before we dive in?
You have no objections. I think it's a pretty good setup. I think it's a good agenda, and we should be able to,
Okay.
give a thing or two to people to think about.
Let's dive into what true product orientation means beyond that surface level change that many organizations attempt. How would you describe the difference between what you call genuine product orientation and what we see as agile theater? Relabeling of roles and restructuring of things without a real meaning behind it. What's the difference?
In general, I'm going to say this is like a preface statement. words are cheap. Anyone can pretty much say anything these days, especially if it's not a controlled industry like tobacco or alcohol. Pretty much, any word that's used loosely can fly. Things will fly, and no one's going to be held accountable for doing this. Just something I wanted to throw out there. But let me give you maybe one or two specific examples where a fake product could confuse the heck out of people. In fact, because it may sound nicely and it may look nicely on paper, someone will falsely fall for this and will be mistreated, misinformed about what a true product is. Here's an example. And I can actually map this. I would like to map this to a more deeper systemic root cause.
Yeah.
Imagine an organization like a large financial institution, like a bank or an insurance company, or a healthcare or pharmaceutical for that matter, it doesn't matter. Any large organization that has many different departments, organizational compartments, teams, structures, each responsible for their own domain. Let's just take a platform or infrastructure team, or take an API team, or a middleware team, or front end, or some sort of a back end team. Teams that are responsible for just a single component, or maybe a few components of a much larger product. Because perhaps an organization is under severe pressure of going agile, and this is it's one of the latest trends, right? Let's go agile, let's go scaling, let's become product-centric. There's a lot of relabeling, like you said, and someone will say, the easiest way to do this is just to take existing bodies of work that are supported by traditional organizational structures such as teams or just single function specialty groups, and let's relabel them into so-called products. So then you end up with a back-end product. You end up with an API or web services product. You end up with a platform as a product, shared services or database as a product. To someone who is not as experienced and not as knowledgeable with the true customer centricity, this may sound like, well, it sounds like a product to this specific team because that's what their focus is, right?
Right.
Interestingly, because and probably this is going to be your next question, because we are traditionally funded, these groups, they have money drives everything, funding drives everything. So in other words, these dimensions of work get funded through programs, projects, portfolios, and therefore they work on what gets funded. So whatever you pay for, that's what you end up working. This is a way to describe a fake product. A true product would be something that, and by the way, none of these aforementioned so-called products are really customer centric. Take a buying customer, ask a paying customer, or facing something. Take an internal power user and ask them, do you feel this is a product? And say, no, this is not a product to me. This is a technical component.
Yeah, or a platform, sometimes we call it, or an enabling thing.
Exactly. Enabling product. Just because you slapped the word product on it doesn't make it into a product.
Yeah.
Because if it does not generate a revenue or does not increase your ROI in a pretty direct way, then it's hard to call it a product. Now, carving out a product is possible.
Yeah.
But you have to cut across multiple components here. And it's a bigger conversation why this is challenging, because you're challenging organizational structures and teams that support it. So I'm not going to jump there just yet.
Yeah. So you mentioned true product. If we could boil that down, how would you define it?
So I would probably always, so in order for me, so I consider myself an end customer to many, I'm sure just like you do, to many things that are out there. Maybe Amazon is my product and I'm its customer. Maybe YouTube is my product and I'm its customer. Take eBay or any other, Travelocity.com. I'm using some of those examples where I'm a end user who logs in, who probably pays for it too. I approach this from the user perspective.
Right.
So for me to define a real product, it means I need to ensure that throughout my customer journey, everything that I need to fulfill my needs is included. Within that journey, while traveling through my own customer journey, if I have to touch 5 or 6 different technical components, I will. It's like it's a stepping stone. It's a part of my journey. It should be seamless to me. I'm not paying explicitly and individually for any one of those components. A company that builds the product, they may call them whatever they want. But as a paying customer, I'm going to tell them what I consider as a product. And if it's a product that's very big, very, 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 very big product, then maybe we need to talk about individual product features that could be also big on their own. So a product is a collection of large customer-centric features. So I will pay for an individual feature that could be potential an add-on to an existing product, which I'm already paying for. But features and products are not in the same dimension. It's almost like they're orthogonal to many of those technical components and structures, definitely needed, mandatory for a product's completeness, but they're orthogonal.
Got it.
So it's almost like slicing a user. For those people that are familiar with the language, with the terminology, user story slicing, you can slice it vertically or you can slice it horizontally.
And if you've described, you can fund it vertically, you can fund it horizontally. And one of these ways is better than another.
Well, from a user's perspective, yes. So if I pay my hard cash, I want to fund it in the direction that gives me business value. A single component alone does not give me any business value.
I think that covers good enough for us to move on, covers the fundamentals.
Sure, yeah.
If an organization wants to embrace true product orientation, it's obviously going to impact many things: funding, team structures, dynamics. You describe a previous state of component teams, right? Or platform teams. What happens if a company doesn't make the leap and tries to maintain one foot in component-based teams and another in what they're thinking is a true product?
Thank you for the question. So I want to avoid false dichotomy by saying that an organization must absolutely get rid of all of the component-centric knowledge or component-centric design. In the ideal nirvana state, maybe this is possible. In reality, we want to see the vast majority of teams as being cross-functional, cross-component cutting, feature/product centric, not component teams. In reality, we may have some remnants, we may have some remaining structures that are still component centric. Ideally, we want to see these structures to be turned from component owning structures to component mentoring structures, such as communities. So community-based structures where developers, software engineers come for learning and for shared understanding, for systematic learning about what those components are. However, ownership of those components through clean code base should belong to product/feature teams where these software developers, product developers belong. Retaining very traditional, heavily emphasized component structure for teams while trying to erect feature teams alongside and trying to mix the two types may create a lot of collision and a lot of friction.
Can you unpack that? Unpack that a little bit. What have you seen happen?
Well, I've seen happening the following. It's almost like a locking horns and becoming getting into a lose-lose competitive game here. A feature team wants to own, or a product team wants to own code base of a given component. They want to be able to touch it. They want to be able to update it, to improve it. If there is an explicit component team that owns it, they will fight back and say, look, you shouldn't be really touching it. Come to us. We'll do it for you. We're the experts. This is where it becomes, we end up with unnecessary complexities in coordination management. By the way, they're very expensive. And then if we go slightly deeper and try to understand why these traditional component structures exist, and oftentimes we hear a justification. Well, because it's almost impossible to grow a full stack developer and build a cross-functional, cross-component cutting product team. This is so difficult. We need to maintain these super duper smart, clever component experts on dedicated teams. That's what we hear. But in hindsight, what we sometimes don't realize, it's the managerial voice that's protecting his or her own turf.
Of course.
We're actually challenging someone's little kingdom. If I'm a component manager, if you're telling me, well, we need your component experts to be embedded on those respective product teams so they can cross-pollinate and teach others so that others can learn from them, you know what it means to me? It means to me that you're telling me that you're going to disband, you're going to dismantle my personal little kingdom.
Yeah, that's a scary proposition for some.
Yeah, so essentially creating, and if you're going to tell me, well, Gene, you can, join one of the component teams as a senior executive component expert and teach others, great. But to me, it actually sounds as a demotion because I used to be a manager. There's an organizational aspect to this.
You had talked a little bit up front about regulated industries, and I'm wondering if there's justification to keep a specialized component team, limited justification because of some regulatory exposure. Have you come across, well, let me make it broader. Is there any use case where it makes sense to keep specialized component teams?
Well, just so you know, like banking is a pretty regulated space, and fintech, as sometimes we hear, is a pretty regulated space. But some of quite a few folks that I've spoken to, the organizational executives, and some people that are in charge of internal audits, and people that face external audits, they confess that many of those regulations, pretty vague and soft, is that it is internal. It is the companies themselves that impose it upon themselves to be on a safe side. So this is just about regulations. But as far as having a justification for still having some of these component teams, one thing to realize, we're not suggesting for the knowledge base and for wisdom to go away. We are not saying let's completely abolish deep component knowledge that some of these people have collected over years. We are in fact recommending to turn these people into professors of craft, into mentors, people that actually teach this to others. So instead of owning this, they can turn themselves into educators, so this can start educating others. And instead of me saying to you, Andy, don't touch it, it's my job, I'll do it. I say, Andy, how about I teach you how to do it? And maybe it will take a while, or vice versa. So for mentors to feel proud of themselves and to feel not diminished in their influence, in their importance, organizations need to make an extra effort to support them by elevating them, by recognizing them, by respecting them. And frankly speaking, nothing speaks louder than a generous compensation. Why not turn a component manager into a component professor whose responsibility now becomes to teach others, make them more senior professor of a top-notch university.
I love it. There's a beauty in that approach, and there's also some thorns in there. But the beauty is over time, the organizational resilience goes up because you've got a bench depth, you've got knowledge, you've got somebody raising up others, ideas cross-fertilizing, and it's really a wonderful thing. The thorns, as you described it, are compensation. We come back to money.
Yeah, so the question of money should always be removed from the table. This is not me who said it. There's quite a bit of research out there for the last couple of decades. I always quote Daniel Pink. He has a great recording and a great video, and the book Drive. Some people have seen it, probably have read it. Paraphrasing what he has said and written, the question of money should be removed from the table. So good executive experts should be paid enough not to think about being paid.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, money talks, and I don't want to sound too cynical and money-centric, but if you take technical experts or any sort of an expert can teach others without worrying about protecting their own spot within a company, worrying about their own compensation, they can do some amazing things.
Yeah.
Especially in banking, we see a lot of bonuses and subjective perks that drive individuals' behaviors, and that is very hard to beat. We cannot really incentivize people not to own, not to dearly hold on to something that's theirs. That's my component. That's my component team. You cannot really, adjust their thinking on this unless you substantiate it with meaningful recognition. This could be promotion with compensation. Yeah.
Let's come down the other side of the hill here. So as an organization moves towards really authentic product centricity, what are some of the feedback loops that you see that indicate things are moving in the right direction? And also, what are some anti-patterns to look out for? That it's just superficial agility theater.
So if we are moving in the right direction, if we are actually erecting feature/product teams, true product teams that are staffed by full stack developers, or maybe not yet full stack developers, but people with an aspiration to become full stack developers. Sometimes we refer to them as T-shaped, or even better, M-shaped developers. And if it's like a nested if, right? And if these people are given fair opportunity to learn and work outside of the traditional space or scope of work that they usually work on, what may happen over time, we shall see more and more learning, more and more knowledge built up within those feature/product teams. And therefore, what we will probably see down the road is fewer dependencies. And managing dependencies is super expensive thing. Companies do not realize that their cycle time is typically much longer. What makes their cycle time and time to market longer is not what it actually takes to build.
It's the wait time in between. How many of us, how many people in our listening audience have mapped out, there's 4 hours of work, but it still takes 30 effing days because you got to open a ServiceNow ticket and then it gets
Exactly. So you said it better than I would. Exactly. With cycle time grotesquely extended, stretched by those wait times, it actually costs a lot. These are astronomical numbers. People think that it's actually cost to build. No, it costs to wait. So one good example of this feature/product centricity increasing, one of the good signs that we should expect is in decreasing the cycle time, decreasing the wait time, decreasing the number of dependencies that teams have on other teams, ability to shorten feedback loops between concept to cash, and ability for developers to hear back much quicker and much sooner from end users or from internal customers, if this is as far as they can go getting their feedback. So those would be the telltale signs that our approach is working. Of course, our organizations would naturally become leaner, flatter, simpler because of that, because you don't need so many points of coordination and escalation and orchestration and dependency management. What happens with dependency managers?
I was just going there. What do they do?
They manage dependencies.
No. I mean, in this futuristic rose garden.
Oh, in this futuristic, well,
How do we repurpose their skills, abilities?
I hate to say this. I'm a strong proponent of job security, but not role security. So if we're going to start optimizing for secureness and individual role, we may sub-optimize for the goodness of the whole product or the whole company. So what do? Well, they can do a couple of things. They can start looking for ways to increase dependencies, so there's something for them to manage to justify the existence.
That's a good Andy pattern.
Hopefully, they're decent enough people that will say, well, there are no dependencies or very few for us to do. We can use our skills to do something else. And presumably, hopefully, they have more skills. They have other hard skills that they can leverage elsewhere. Maybe they'll get ahead of the product sales, marketing, product management, or maybe they have technical skills and they can jump back into communities and teach others whatever expertise they may have on components, or maybe they will join product teams as senior product developers. So there are things to do, of course, if they have scars to show that they can do it. But there is a danger that they may push back implicitly and say, you know what? No, we need to, this isn't as simple as it gets. And next thing you know, the people that are in charge of complexity and dependency management, they will be looking for complexities and dependencies. And if they don't find them, what do?
They might just make them.
They may just make them. That's right.
That touches into the final lightning rod, budgeting.
Budgeting.
And with that is HR policies and support. There's probably a fourth show in our trilogy on that, but maybe quickly before we wrap up, what are the budget implications? How does the money flow in a product-oriented organization? They've got to approach these things dramatically differently.
Yeah.
How do they start?
Well, it's funny you say that. In my, when I teach large-scale Scrum and organizational design with product centricity, and one of the system model and exercises is actually called follow the money. So we still live in the world where money means so much. We can talk about futuristic state, but today we still have money, funding, budgeting. So I always want to recommend approaching a product definition and product centricity from the standpoint of a buying customer. So it's actually very convenient to follow the money with a proper product definition, because once you do, you will realize if you trace it to Gemba, as we call it. Gemba is, in Japanese, it's called Genshu Gembutsu, where value gets created to the teams. You will realize we can actually budget true product teams. And the mathematics of this becomes swiftly simple, because we just know who works. We just know for how long they work, for how, and we just know how much they make. And You can actually easily budget your product development for a year with forecasting even going longer, as long as you have properly defined product and see your cash flow. You know what your product makes, right? You somehow, and I'm sure there are people that, you know, in sales and marketing and revenue and people that do P&L, they can help with that. So if a product makes X number of dollars, let's say $5 million a year, $4 million will go into your company's revenue, into a big bag of cash, and another million maybe will go to pay for the actual product development. And this is handled by product teams. So you just have to pay salaries with some surplus, maybe, you know, equipment, stuff, you know, overhead stuff. Just if I may just want to add something else. If we still live in the legacy state where we traditionally budget portfolios, programs, projects that are not necessarily consistent they're orthogonal, their dimension is very different from a product, we may have a lot of challenges funding real products. If we fund traditional legacy projects, especially if we have a highly pronounced projectized organization where you know functional teams get assembled and disassembled on the go based on short-term midterm project length, it's going to be super tough to fund a real product. So what we fund matters a lot. And in order for us to fund a product, we really need to pay a lot of attention to proper product definition. And it's not from the technology perspective per se. Technology is super critical to build stuff. But if we approach product definition from a technology perspective only, or predominantly from the technology perspective, we may end up with a lot of components and infrastructure pieces and technical frameworks redefined, relabeled as fake products. And customers don't buy those.
Yeah, more agile theater.
It will end up with and large organizations are notoriously known for that. Yeah. They'll just relabel stuff and it'll check the box, you know, end of 2024, we productized our organization. Everything that used to be a component now is a product. Let's pat each other in the back.
Perverse incentives. Be careful what you measure. Well, Gene, we're coming up close to our time box. Anything else that you want to add before we close?
One more last thing, and this is it's a shout out to my colleagues, trainers, coaches, and organizational design consultants. When they teach, coach, or advocate lean product development, adaptive product development, such as Scrum or large scale Scrum, please do not fall into the trap of defining tiny, smallish products, as we have discussed today, and calling every local to the team business analyst as a product owner, and do not call any used to be component team into a Scrum team and call it a Scrum team and call an internal technical /X BA into a product owner. Just don't do that, because you're going to end up with 20, 30, 40 fake products developed by 20, 30 component teams.
But my buddies, the dependency managers, will get work for life.
Exactly. But 30 component teams, you're gonna need 29 dependency managers, 30 minus 1 and minus 1 to manage asynchronous dependencies. And that's a pretty penny.
Yeah. What are the best ways for our listeners to get in touch with you if they want to carry on the conversation?
LinkedIn is probably the best.
I'll make sure to include that information in the show notes. I want to thank you once again, Gene, and we'll see you again next time. We got to schedule that third episode still.
Sure.
We'll hopefully bring it all to a close.
We'll have fun there. Thank you. Thank you for hosting, Andy. This has been great. Thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah. Thank you to our listening audience. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend, share it with a dependency manager, and let them know that there is hope. You can find me on our Discord server. See the show notes for a link, and subscribe to the show, and we'll catch the next one. Thanks. Until next time.
Thank you very much. Hey, everyone, thank you very much. Be safe. Stay safe. Don't be safe.
Oh, wait. Do less. Wait, do more. Oh, let's just close it there.
Yeah, let's just close.